Welcome back to the Perfect Lap Podcast. I'm Mark Jager. This is Mark Kilgore. He goes by Kilgore. I go by Jager. And today we have an awesome guest with us, a BMW E36 lover, a guy who always has had a great livery on his car, which we absolutely appreciate and love. Basically, he is podiumed on every single global time attack he has ever been to, which is 3, just to make it very clear. He is a BMW, a Bimmer challenge legend. We have Bailey Woods. All right, guys, Bailey Woods in the house. He is fresh off of a global time attack, the Ridge Motorsports Park event, Speed Summit. All right, Bailey, we're going to get into this a little bit, but first, I'm just going to say this, guys. We have a lot of very interesting aspects that we're going to discuss with Bailey. It's going to go all over the place. I'm not even going to lie to you guys. We're going to talk to him about, basically where he got started, where he's going, how the car has been, what tires he likes, what tires he doesn't like. So you guys really need to stay tuned to understand what makes this man tick and to make sure that you can try to catch him as we come in to the GTA finals. So all you competitors out there in limited class, better take notice, better listen to the whole podcast from start to finish so you can be even close to this guy as we get to Buttonwillow. All right, Bailey, here we are. Let's just start this out with a simple question. What got you started in cars? What made you say cars is where I want to be?
First of all, that was quite the introduction. I'm feeling a little hyped up right now. But, I came from a car family. My dad used to take me to IndyCar when I was a kid and grew up with go-karts and dirt bikes, RC cars, basically anything with wheels and an engine, was something that grabbed my attention and took my interest. And, rode dirt bikes, tried to do that competitively, and I wasn't the fastest out there. I grew up in a pretty fast part of Washington where a lot of riders were just absolutely insane. And I think, when I was about time to get my license, I started reading things like Modified Magazine and Super Street, and I've always had an interest in engineering and things like that. So when I saw these people building these cars, it was kind of this collaboration between, putting your personal touch on something, trying to improve it. And I think customizing cars is what really got my attention into motorsports in general. And, I grew up watching Formula One and all that stuff, but building cars was kind of my thing. And yeah, they got me really excited. And I first started off building show cars, which I think back now is just absolutely hilarious. And, I used to take my STI out to, hot and pour nights and things like that. And
Nice.
A couple of times, I'd get like second place because I didn't have any ice in my car, no subs in the trunk. And those were some pretty fun days. I took that car to go drag racing a couple of times, and I even did a driver education program in it, like an actual racing school. And, that got the gears turning. And as I got a little bit older, I got into sport bikes. And in my early 20s, I was living up in Washington, and I actually used to take my Ducati out to the Ridge. And that's how I got my introduction to the Ridge. And that was kind of my first real experience in trying to, push and get a little faster on the track and something. And so, something like Speed Summit, when I get to go back up to Washington and experience that track and something completely different than a motorcycle, it's always something that I really want to do.
Well, I can tell you right now, man, if you got to experience the Ridge on a motorcycle, it doesn't surprise me why you want to go back in a car and go fast, because I didn't even get to drive that track. I got to tool around that track in a crappy rental car. And immediately I said, oh my God, I want to drive this track. The track is absolutely phenomenal. And I'll let you give it a lot more than I could ever. What are your overall impressions? What are some of the things you really love about that track?
I mean, other than I have family in Washington and the nostalgia of going back up to that track. First of all, the Speed Summit is an awesome event. I think it may be my favorite event of the year, but that track is just, it's incredible. I think it's a hidden gem, and I always try and recruit people from California to come up there for the event because that track is so enjoyable. It's got probably one of the longest straights on the West Coast. It's got hairpins, it's got high speed turns, it's got blind turns, crests, hills, dips. I think it gets a little bit of everything. So, to be fast that track, I think you need to use all the tools in your tool belt. And it's nice to see some trees around instead of desert, compared to what we're used to down here. And I think it's an absolutely incredible experience. And I think anyone that goes there and spends a weekend up there will realize how amazing and special that track is.
Oh, I agree. That thing it just immediately it was interesting to me, obviously, because getting there and like pulling up to the track, at first I kind of got that like, oh, this is it vibe. And then once you really get to understand where the track is and how the layout flows, especially that first turn, I think that first turn for Time Attack is just so freaking cool. It just is one of those like really high downforce, really cool corners that just makes it really awesome to go super fast on a corner. It takes I look at that as like a challenging corner that you can essentially, I don't want to say you got to have big balls to do, but it's going to separate the men from the boys. That is for sure.
You need to be a
Or,
little courageous.
so it's, I don't know. I instantly kind of fell in love with that track, just being there for that one event, that one time, and just thought it was epically cool. And like you said, right, I think more people need to go up there and experience it. And it'd be cool to have, the Canadians come down and experience a little bit more as well. I think that's kind of a big factor there. Um, but yeah, I mean, it's kind of interesting because, me and Kilgore talk a lot about like epic tracks, right? So when we think of epic tracks, I will say tracks that have history for me always make them that much cooler. And that's why, like, for me, when I went to Road Atlanta, I wanted to go there because it was a track with a huge amount of racing heritage and just a lot of interesting aspects. Same thing with like places like Laguna Seca, that type of thing. But I think when I really look at like Time Attack, I think Time Attack has to build their history at a track. And when you look at a track like the Ridge, I think that's where Time Attack history, like places like that, are where Time Attack history can still be made. And so let's, well, okay, I was gonna say let's get into a little bit about how you did at that, but I don't know if I'm ready for that just yet. We got to build our way up. So sorry, guys, we're not just gonna jump right into how he did at the track and his amazing lap times and all. Hold on. We'll stick with the game plan here. So you've gotten into cars. You did some motorcycle stuff, which already makes you crazy in my book. Anytime you're on a motorcycle, you're
Hmm.
absolutely insane. You've basically, so what transition? What was that moment? Do you think that really, like you said, you got your license and so on and so forth? So I think a lot of people know you as like a very BMW guy. I find it very interesting. You said you own a Subaru, went to Hot Import Nights, because I feel like me and you just like crossed these paths. Like we did the like same exact thing. So me and buddies with Honda Civics were doing Hot Import Nights, and I was helping them with their show cars. Luckily for me, I never built a show car. Maybe that's because I don't have the talent, but that's just one of those things.
I mean, like,
But yeah, so what was that? What do you think? What was that thing that got you really further along into racing, going to the track more and more?
yeah, well, I think I've always enjoyed pretty much anything, like I said, with an engine and some wheels. I think even though I really enjoyed the sport bike, especially just a liter bike or 1,000 cc sport bike, the way those things accelerate, and it's literally, there's nothing that compares to it. But either way, there was still something kind of lacking there, and I think I've just always gravitated towards four-wheeled motorsports more, even though there's super interesting, and I love watching MotoGP and stuff like that. But I've always wanted to get into racing cars, and when you're in your 20s, you don't have a ton of money, and racing is pretty expensive. So I was still looking for some way to get into racing while I developed an income to support it. I was looking for events that I really enjoy, activities that make you be in that moment. So, if you're on the track and you're trying to put down the fastest lap that you've ever put down on track, and there's walls and things like that, you're not thinking about the report that's due on Monday, or, did I leave the stove on, or whatever it may be. So I got into skydiving, and that was kind of my passion for a few years, because that's that event where once you jump out of a plane, you're not too concerned about anything else, and you're very focused and trying to maximize that moment. Uh, as I was getting a little bit more of a healthier income, I bought an E36 M3. I think that was in 2018, and just cruising through YouTube one day, I saw a promotion video for Bimmer Challenge, and they had the music and the cars, and it just lit me up. I saw people like James Pake with his E92 M3 and Andrew Lim with his E46 M3, like Alex Chang and his Z4M, and these guys were all, to me, they were legends, even though I didn't even know them, but I just got so excited about that concept. And next thing I did is, I did a few small modifications to my E36, and I was out for my very first track day and had no idea what I was doing, but I figured I'd just show up and compete in Bimmer Challenge and see what happened. And early 2019 Willow Springs, I came in dead last by a significant margin, and they're on our 888Rs, didn't even check tire pressure. So I was just as green it gets, So yeah, that's the one right there. Look at that, the tan leather interior.
Nice, nice. Well, I can at least appreciate, and we try and tell people this all the time, which is you did what we try and tell people to do all the time, which is like, it doesn't matter. You were in E36 M3 is still a solid car, solid platform to start with,
Great.
but like, you just went out there and you just got out there and you just went, right? Like, okay, get some brake pads, make sure the car's in good condition, maybe throw on some tires, and like, just go and compete. That is the absolute best way to get involved. You don't need to have like all this stuffed under your car. You're not going to get laughed at. Like, people aren't going to show up and be like, who's this guy in like this stock looking M3, right? Like, you just got to get out there and just go do it. And that's absolutely what you've done. And now you can see what you've been able to accomplish behind you. Like, that's where it all starts. You just need to go out there and get to that first track day.
Yeah, and it was a great community. I didn't really know anyone at the time, and I remember at the end of the event walking up after the podium ceremony, and I didn't know who he was, but I spoke to James Pake, and I was like, hey, where did I land on the list, and he was so kind to me, and he showed me the list and pointed me that I was at the very last, I think I had like 4 seconds, the guy in front of me, and he's like, he was so encouraging. He's like, oh man, you're only a few seconds away, next time you're going to get him. And, I had such a good day. I didn't know anyone, and I just, was on track trying to learn. And something as simple as him just giving me a little boost, I was hooked, and I was back. And every single time I was at the track after that, I went a little faster, learned a little bit more, realized I should probably do tire pressures, and then the rest is history. I kept on competing with Bimmer Challenge, and every year I kind of did like a revision of my car to some extent. So, I went in, had a pretty stock E36. It had, coilovers and brakes and stuff on it like that, but then did a huge weight reduction and jumped up class and started taking a little bit more serious. And then the next year, took out a little bit more weight, added a better tire. And, each year you just kind of do a huge jump, and you get accustomed to the car throughout the season. So, I had a few different iterations of my car. This one right here that you're showing is, that was my B2 car. So that was still a stock S52 engine, but the car only weighed, 2,300 pounds and no aero. It was just on a Hoosier A7, and it was set up really well. And that's probably a peak driving experience right there.
Oh, for sure.
It was interesting to experience something new every year, try and dial it in and develop my driving for that particular iteration of the car. And I've just had a blast with the E36. It's a great driver development car. It starts off super slow, and you just kind of keep tinkering with it, and it's got, plenty of pace. You just got to set it up right.
Yeah.
Oh, absolutely, dude. And I mean, this thing is, I love the fact that, and this is just me, and going back to that photo that you had of the interior, I just want people to really understand, like, this is such an epic job of doing things into like epic proportions, and it's simple stuff, right? Like I know it sounds crazy when I say it's simple stuff, but it's like pulling out the interior, cleaning it out, making it as light as possible to make it the best driving experience as possible with less weight. It definitely makes the car handle better, and just in general just drive better, let me just say. And just keeping it super simple, and it just looking amazing while doing so, right? I love this. I love the fact that it wasn't, let me go add 1,000 horsepower to this car, because that's, I mean, we all get hunkered into that, right? It's really easy to throw engine mods on really fast. You went a different route. You went that lighter weight route, and obviously it paid dividends, right? Like you were able to really optimize what you had and take the time to build the car in a slow, methodical environment. And I think one of the things I really want to say here, and I'd love to get your feedback here, the Beamer challenge as a whole, right? Like you said, it was super inviting. The different people that were there, welcomed you in with open arms and like helped you. And, probably, I guarantee at some juncture you said, dude, what do you set your tire pressures to? What are you doing? Yeah, it's like, and I think that's something that we all get. That's something we all, get to at some juncture in time, where that community is what really helps us transfer from just like, oh, I show up like once in a while, to really ingrain and get yourself really dove into that, right? And that's, I don't care what organization you're talking about, that's going to be the difference, whether or not you come back and run for the second, third, fourth time, or if you're like a one and done. Like, you go to an organization that's just not welcoming and is not like there with open arms, you turn around and go home and you just go, yeah, that's not that fun. I mean, I will say, having, built friendships at the track, people that that you care about, you're helping, all of those different things. That's what makes going to the track a good time. Like when you don't even schedule it with them, but it's like, oh, I know if I go, I'm going to see. I love knowing that no matter what track day I go to, I will know some people at that track day.
For sure.
Like, and I guarantee. So like was that like and I know I'm kind of like just saying all this stuff and not asking a question, but is that something that you felt as you're going through like the Beamer challenge?
Oh, for sure. I think good community and good competition goes pretty far. There was 3 years straight where I put a ton of time and effort into Bimmer Challenge because I got so excited about it the year prior, where I was kind of getting my feet wet, and met so many good people. And my first year I was in the B3 class when I started competing pretty aggressively, and it was me and Alex Bernstein and Robert Robles, and we were battling super hard, and we just kind of kept going back and forth each event. I win one, they win one, and yeah, we were all rooting for each other, but at the same time, we're all trying to win, and it was incredible. It totally, slingshotted me towards wanting to take this pretty serious and put all my time and resources into it. And, it's led me down this rabbit hole of just being a time attack scumbag. And yeah,
Heck yeah.
I'm hooked for life. And, I've done wheel to wheel too. And of course, that's a good time. And I would consider wheel to wheel real racing. And, time attack is kind of just qualifying, which is, Saturday morning on a proper weekend. But time attack is my thing. I love it. Bimmer challenge is still that in me, but I love going out there and just trying to get that one perfect lap. There's something special about that. Maximum effort from the driver, maximum effort from the car. Everything is perfect. Weather's perfect. Tires are perfect. And it just, something magical happens every once in a while. And there's no better rush than just clicking off that lap that you were chasing,
Heck
Oh,
yeah.
God, yes.
I do have to say this. You mentioned Alex Bernstein there. I would love to have your car and his car next to each other and have to decide which one is the cleaner build. Like, man, just two so clean, epic builds. His E92 M3, your E36 M3. Like, man, all inspiring. Definitely things that I'm like, okay, if I ever had one of those, that's what I would want it to look like. So, big props to both of you guys.
Oh, I appreciate that. But, something to kind of pull there is Riley from RS Motorsport is kind of the one that, did all the fabrication work on both of those cars.
Okay.
And,
he's the common denominator, huh?
he's incredible. I can't speak highly enough of Riley, the work that he does, and just his focus and attention to detail, and I guess his passion for, creating absolutely beautiful pieces of art is just no one. I don't know anyone that comes close. So
Nice.
he's the factor there.
So give me a little bit. I've heard of Beamer Challenge quite a bit. I know a little bit about it, but I've never really had the opportunity to talk to someone who really participated in it and got started in it. My understanding is that it generally runs within a larger like time attack or even like a HPDE weekend. Is
Right.
that correct? Like,
Yeah.
what is it? I've seen the different classes be like B3, B2, B1, different stuff like that. Kind of give me the 30-second rundown of what Beamer Challenge is, because I don't know that much about it. Unfortunately, I wish I did. I wish I had something like that when I was around, but
Yeah, so Bimmer Challenge is a division, I guess you could say, for Speed Ventures, which is a track organization, mostly HPDE, but they have other time attack series within it, whether it's Corvette or Honda or Toyota, whatever it may be. Each one has its own little specification, but we all run out there together. So if we're out there in the fast group of the day, it could be a bunch of Beamers and a bunch of Corvettes, and we're all fighting
okay,
for track to try and win our event.
gotcha. And what's the general like high level rule set for each of the classes?
Every modification has a series of points that's dedicated to it. So, one-way coilover is 1 point, two-way 2 points, three-way 3 points. Depending on the size of the wing, it adds other points. Each car starts with a certain amount of points. So there's a point structure for the chassis as well as what you're going to do to the chassis. And that kind of determines where you're at on the points. So obviously, if you want to compete in B3 class, you see what the maximum points are and you build your car what you think is the best possible modifications to fall underneath that points value.
That's cool. I've never done those, but I've always thought those were kind of cool. I guess that's sort of how NASA does it. Some of these other organizations, I've always thought that was a cool structure.
For
Build
sure.
your
And
own
yeah, and
mousetrap.
it puts together some really good competition.
Yeah, I would say in my experience, I did Subaru a challenge-ish thing back in the day. Um, and honestly, I'd say that was probably some of the closest and best competition out there because obviously it's much easier to write a rule set when you're honed in on like just these few cars. And like you said, you can say, hey, each one of these modifications to these cars, we know that this is going to net you between this horsepower to this horsepower. And it's very easy to build those rule sets to be very close for racing. As we see in a lot of forms of racing, where things are like that and they're very close in that regard. So yeah, it's a super good way to just get into it. I think like Big Bailey saying, it also makes it very cost effective. Like you can get into some of these lower level classes and they're not hugely expensive. And obviously you can go there just to have fun. One thing I want to ask you, Bailey, you've mentioned a few people's names throughout this. I think one of the things for me over the years, it was always awesome to have like that like direct competitor that you were looking at that essentially like drove me to push myself in the car that much harder, maybe spend a few extra dollars on my credit card that I really shouldn't. Who's your like who was your person, and do you have a person right now that you're looking at and chasing?
I think that that's something that kind of changes each year. Since I kept moving up one class every single Beamer Challenge, not necessarily if you start with someone at B3, they're going to modify their car and move up to B2 and things like that. But Bernstein for a long time was a direct competitor in B3 and B2, and in when I was doing B1 class, which is the top class in Bimmer Challenge, it was my buddy Alex, and I was trying to beat him that year without putting aero on my car. And the first 3 events, I just couldn't keep up with him. He has a Stroker S65 E92 with Zebulon aero, and it's an absolute monster. And I was a little cocky thinking, I'll get this guy. And I think, after the third, I think going into the third event, after 2 second places, I said, if you get me again today, I'm going to put aero on my car and I'm going to ruin it. And then he
Nice.
got time. I hit up Zebulon, threw aero on my car, and then he wasn't necessarily the competitor anymore.
And that's why we ended up with this.
Yeah, yeah.
Here at the Perfect Lab Podcast, we're happy to introduce Whoosh Bespoke Wheels as a sponsor of the show. Whoosh Bespoke was born out of necessity. Their race team struggled to find wheels that offer the perfect fit, strength, durability, and that big old thing, a reasonable price. The people behind Whoosh Bespoke are racers and engineers seeking engineering excellence, and they offer precision forged wheels crafted by racers for racers, with a product lineup that includes a wide range of options from monoblock to modular wheels, including 2- and 3-piece wheel designs. all engineered from the finest materials, although they do primarily use 6061 T6 forged aluminum, but they do offer things as high of quality as a magnesium alloy. So this really can work for any setup you're trying to go for. Customization is at the heart of what they do at Whoosh Bespoke. You can tailor your wheels with custom sizes, offsets, finishes, and even options like custom lettering, adding two-tones. Their colors include both standard and premium finishes, as well as special finishes like brushed, hand polished, and even paint to sample. Every set of wheels produced exceeds the JWL standards and meets the rigorous WCEC quality standards, and they are tested by real people with real cars racing all around the world. And guess what? Me and Kilgore, we're also going to be part of that team. So we're going to be putting these things to the test. We're putting them on our cars. Kilgore's going to be repping out and going through all the time attack season. I'm going to be beating them up at HPDE days and just having a good time with them. So I want you to go take a look at them and make sure you give them a follow on all their socials. It's whooshautomotive.com, Whoosh Automotive on all the socials. Go check them out. Nice.
So, I guess Jaeger, you can relax a little bit. Let's talk about the M3. Give me sort of this iteration process that you've done. I think you're on V4 now currently, if I'm
calling
correct.
this one
So,
V4.
all right, yeah. So give me the quick rundown on. We've already talked about you've kind of made your way through B3, B2, B1, kind of progressing that way. So what else have you done?
Well, the car was, the last iteration of the car was the S54, super lightweight. It was on a 245 A7. So the car was perfect and it was super dialed in. But, when it comes to events like Grid Life and Global Time Attack, it's just not built for that rule set. And so I was competing in Unlimited. And even though I had success at a couple events, I just knew that if I wanted to kind of take it seriously and take it to the next level, that I was going to have to make some big changes to the car. And I didn't necessarily want to go build a monster, some 1,000 horsepower car that would be competitive in the top class. And I was kind of thinking, well, I think I could put a 4-cylinder turbo in the car, get a decent amount of power, a very usable amount of power, put a wide body on it, try and really get a little bit more weight out of it and set the chassis up, put on a fast street tire. And, I think I can be pretty competitive in a limited class or the track mod class. And so a while ago, I started playing around with the idea of, what engines could I put into this car? And, obviously everyone says go with an LS the world. And I
Disgusting.
I was looking for something different, and I thought my concept has always been weight and chassis is the most important aspect of the car. And I was thinking, 4-cylinder turbo has to be the best option. And I was going to do a K20 or a K24 and it just didn't feel quite right. And I'm not necessarily a purist, but I wanted to put a BMW engine in the car. And
so, sorry, let me ask before we get too far with the new engine, let's back it up a little bit. So you had you originally started with the S52, which is what came in the car.
Right.
And then you went to the S54. I guess that was V2, V3, whatever you want to call it. It was V3. in the V3. And you had the arrow on it with the Zebulon arrow. And so were you running a like standalone like ECU, or was that still like sort of a BMW kind of cobbled together wiring harness? Like how were you running that engine
that was
and on that platform?
The S54 was the standard ECU out of an E36. And then Jarek at JMP Auto Works, he's the one that wired it all up and got it to work correctly. And he did the MK60 at the same time, which was on a standalone ECU for itself. But that was a relatively simple, straightforward setup. An E36 with an S54 is pretty cookie cutter. I just happened to make it work pretty well. And so I kind of had to step out of the box for this V4 version.
Okay. All right. So what do you got now?
So now, I was super hesitant about this K24 swap, even though it felt like it was the right move. And I had seen Brett Strom of Strom Motorsports develop his, B46 program for a while, in which he builds these extremely nice, well put together E46 endurance cars that use a B46, B48 engine. And I kind of, talked to him a couple of times, and then we were at I believe a SoCal Drivers Club meet, which was at Race Technologies or Brembo here in Southern California. And he had one of his endurance cars out there with the B48. And I kind of started picking his brain about it. And that's when I decided I'd get a little bit serious about this swap. And I think a couple of months later, the car went back to JMP, who did the original S54 swap. And, we kind of did a partnership with Brett over there at Strong Motorsports, and we put in this B48 engine. B46 and B48 are the same thing. The only difference is that the B46 has some like smog related items on it, or some emissions related items. So it's still the same engine. You pull a couple of items off, it's the same thing. So he sold me on it. A modern engine has a lot to offer. He started putting them in his cars because you can find them in any junkyard. They're a lot less expensive than S54s, and S54s like to pop. So it's a pretty expensive engine to kind of keep putting in place when it doesn't, stick together. I mean, I blew up my first S54 on the very first track that I had it.
Oh, wow.
So,
Damn.
the second one.
What are those cars? And even though I am a pretty big BMW nerd, I'm not as familiar with these engines. What do they normally come in? Like, what do you pull them out of?
They'll come in like a brand new 3 Series. So I got mine out of a Z4, a brand new Z4. They also come in the new Supras, the 4-cylinder version of Supra, just a little 2-liter 4-cylinder turbo,
Okay. So I guess it's like, B48, which would make sense. B58, kind of like the little brother.
It's the 4-cylinder B58.
Okay, cool. I got you.
Which is the engine everyone told me I should have put in, but I want to prove everyone wrong.
Sometimes you just have to forge your own path. You have to do your own thing, People like to tell everybody, like you said before, oh, you got to put an LS in it. If you don't put an LS, you're wasting your time. And then the next person will tell you should have put an LS with a supercharger or LS with a turbo. And the next person will tell you it should have been the Coyote. There's always somebody that has an opinion, and that's where I like that you're forging your own path, choosing what makes you feel like the right path for you. So
it's called being stubborn.
It's called being stubborn. I mean, there's a bit of stubbornness to it. I mean, I bet for the BMW aficionados and lovers out there, they probably appreciate you sticking with a BMW engine just to keep that, in the party, in the friend zone or whatever.
I think a lot of people appreciate it, but of course there's haters everywhere. So, there's plenty of people that, still going to talk poorly about my decisions, but that's my decision, and I'm pretty happy about it.
At the end of the day, the results are going to net. And I'm going to tell you right now, I'm going to stab in the dark here and say this. If the results are good, everyone's going to say yes, and you yourself will say, I made the best decision and it's the best thing ever. I guarantee you, if the results don't net what you expect or want, I guarantee you we'll see a different engine in this car, and that will prove yourself right or wrong. So at the end of the day, it will show.
For sure. I think we'll stick with this one for a while. It would be nice to make a little bit more power, but I think once we get it dialed in, it's going to be a pretty potent package.
So we didn't actually say, or at least I was being deaf at the time, how much horsepower does it net output? I'm assuming it's turboed, so you can be pretty variable in that scope. But
yeah, so right now we're limited on the turbo. It's a custom turbo by Strom that's equivalent to a G25 660, and the car does 450 wheel, and that's on E85. It makes 450 wheel torque just below 3,500, and then that line stays straight on 450 all the way until it meets the horsepower line at 450. So if you look at my dyno chart, it's from 3,500 to 7,200, it's 450 the whole way across.
And just to remind the viewers, so you just said 450 horsepower, 450 foot-pounds of torque, and how much does the car weigh?
With me and fuel, it's just shy of 2,500.
So that's because I know people, I know the internet. Don't get me started on the internet. Where if you're not making 1,000 horsepower, oh, it's the end of the world, right? I swear, I've been hanging out in the Mustang TikTok land for a little too long. Everyone's making 1,000 horsepower for every single car on the planet. So it's just one of those things, right? It's about, again, I think one thing you proved with the previous rendition of this car is that balance is key to these cars really doing well and not just about peak levels of horsepower.
Absolutely.
So, what do you think of in terms of what you got? I mean, obviously you said you're turbo limited. What do you think in terms of what's the tuner and everybody think in terms of your reliability factor at this juncture?
Well, right now, I think the reliability as it sits is amazing. Like I don't think I have to worry about anything. It's a completely stock engine on the internals, and I think it's going to hold that all day long. And Brett uses these cars, like I said, for endurance. So, he'll do 8 hours straight, and maybe it's not at the same power level, but that's a lot more difficult on the engine than, 2 laps tuned up just a little bit. And he's pretty conservative. I think, I don't think he's going to put me anywhere where he thinks the engine or any components are going to be, at risk. And if he's comfortable with it, I'm comfortable with it. I'm gonna, gonna say it's a safe bet that that engine's gonna last for a while.
All right. Yeah, you
I'll
got to
bet
trust
actually
your
much
tuner.
longer.
Gotta
But
trust that
you need, and this is what I love about turbos. It's like, yeah, I mean, you can run it at 450, but like maybe we need that 550 tune just in case,
A little push to
right?
pass.
Yeah, exactly. Scramble button. Need that straight line speed. That's why. I mean, I'm glad to see that you've done that. It's definitely worth it. So I think it's a super cool build. So did you set out to kind of do this version 4 specifically for the limited / track mod classes with that in mind? Kind of you had those rule books in front of you when you started looking at working with Riley and kind of looking at what all you can do.
Yeah, that's exactly what it was. It's since the car previously wasn't built for a rule set, I thought, if I'm gonna kind of keep going down this road, I need to look at the rules and figure out what's the most competitive and balanced package I can put together to put in some work in these 2 classes, which was limited and track mod. And I think it's there. I think it was a big risk for me, or at least it felt like a big risk going from a slick to a street tire. It's a pretty big change up. And so I also went from a 17 by 9.5 on a 245 up to an 18 by 11 on a 315 square. So that was a big concern for me. Weight has always been the kind of the guiding factor for how I develop my car. And to add, 35 pounds in rotating mass of unsprung weight was a huge concern. I thought I was going to wreck the car, and I don't think I've wrecked it, but the car definitely has some development to do to get it back to where I want it to.
Nice.
How much time do you think? Obviously, you spent a lot of time in version 1, 2, 3 of this car. When you got to version 3, give us an estimate of how much time did you really spend on the development of that car before you felt like you really optimized it?
I think I understood the chassis very well at that point. So even though that I added horsepower and aero, I think that I'd been on the same tire for basically 2.5 seasons or so. And, the chassis and the suspension and brakes and everything was the same. So I think I got so good at understanding and driving that car without the aero and at the limit on that specific tire that when I added the engine and the aero, it just unlocks all of my potential, because I just didn't have to think about losing the car anymore. I just felt so planted and was such like foreign concept that the car wasn't like airborne for 90% of the lap, that I picked it up pretty quickly. I think after a couple track days, I understood what the pace was, but for that last little bit of refinement, I think it probably took me 6 months or so to get pretty close to what I thought the limitation of that particular package was.
I think that's a key thing for everyone to kind of take away from this too. Um, you see a lot of people, and we see it a lot, where people swap to a new tire, right? And they throw a new tire on, and they're like, "Oh, that tire wasn't faster than my last tire. It's crap. Go back to the other tire," or something to that tune, right? We see these people slap something on and immediately don't go like a second faster, and all of a sudden it's like, "Oh, that part sucked." I think that we really need to understand that these things take an enormous amount of time to develop. Race teams don't just, oh, we're switching from Pirelli to Michelin and like go out the next day and go out and do one track day and they're set and they're golden. Like the amount of time and energy that all teams generally take when taking on any new parts to a car are enormous. And for a lot of the tuner culture, we kind of have this weird expectation that we throw something on and it's immediately faster. So something I want to touch on really quickly. Obviously, we started talking about tires a little bit, and currently you are running the Hoosier Time Attack Pros, and it's kind of been an interesting wave with the Time Attack Pros. The initial rollout came out really hard, and people were saying these are the fastest things on the planet. No one's gonna be able to touch these tires. Oh my god! Oh my god! Oh my god! And then all of a sudden, it got hit with a stone wall of people saying, "Oh, I tried these, and they're not any good. My other name any brand, and they're faster." So what is your interpretation of that? And obviously you've touched on it a little bit, but really give us kind of a rundown, your experience with the Time Attack Pros, and how much time you think you still need to really gain the trust and the experience in them.
Yeah. I think we were talking about this, but every chassis, every setup, every driver is all different. And those three items kind of combine into what makes a tire work or doesn't work. And I think you really have to spend a lot of time on a tire to understand how to operate it at its peak performance. I've tried other tires. I really don't have much experience when it comes to the 200 treadwears or anything that's not a slick. But the one thing that I had going for me is coming from the Hoosier slick down to the Hoosier street tire or track tire was it had very similar characteristics. So I felt like I already understood it. So even though it was less grippy and a little less fast, the dynamics were still the same. And so I think my driving style worked in my favor towards coming down to this Track Attack Pro. And, I've tried AO52s, which I know is kind of the gold standard when it comes to time attack, that and the CRS. And I've tried those before, and they don't work for me. I think they're super numb and vague, and I don't get that feeling that I want out of them. And I want my tires to communicate with me and be extremely responsive. And the Track Attack Pro is a super responsive tire, and I think as long as you operate it within its window, it's really fast. And maybe it works for my car because it's so light and it doesn't create a ton of power. Where someone in a G body or a F82 with a ton of torque and 3,500 pounds to move around it, they just overheat them and they get greasy and they don't work anymore. So
I'm interested because you said you tried the Nanking CRSs.
I tried the AO52.
Oh, AO52.
I used to run AR1s all the time, and I thought the AR1 was a great tire. I just didn't know much at that time. I was still, pretty green.
Gotcha.
Better than your R888s.
That's the one thing I know is the R888. So I don't want to talk too poorly about them, but that tire is not the business.
Yeah, not exactly gonna crush anything with that one.
They had their moment back in the day. I mean,
they did.
I think that's maybe more of a show tire than a track tire.
They got you around the track at least.
Yeah, I definitely go down a path. So the thing I was kind of driving at there was my opinion, in driving a few of those tires and hearing other people's driving impressions, and Kilgore has some experience on these tires as well, so he can chime in. When it comes to like the Vitors, I think they have a very sidewall, I think, is a huge factor when it comes to these tires and what that's going to do for, your stability, depending on like your weight and all these things. And one thing for me is I have found, like on my Mustang, which is like 4,000 pounds of glory, I do like a tire that has stiffer sidewalls. Running like the Nanking CRS, I was very unhappy with that tire on the Mustang. It rolled over. It just felt mushy, felt not great. And that's one thing that I had heard a little bit about from the Time Attack Pros. And what's the tire that you just mentioned? I just forgot.
The AO52.
Yeah. And I've kind of heard that about the AO52s, is that the sidewall is a little bit softer. And so I'd be interested to try the AO52 on the Mustang to see if it's kind of that same concept. I'm also very interested to try the Time Attack Pros. I'm just too broke.
More expensive, unfortunately. It's pretty unfortunate. I went from a 17-inch 245 to a 18-inch 315. It's a little painful.
Yeah,
Oh
yeah.
yeah.
But Jaeger, to your point there, and I think that this backs up what Bailey's saying. Not that we need to back him up, but um, it was always interesting because nobody really runs the Track Attack Pro in Grid Life. I've seen them scarcely in Global Time Attack, but to your point, it was kind of interesting. The Supra guys, or I'm gonna say the Supra guys, but really I should say the Supra chassis seems to really like a big sidewall. Like they're talking about running like 18 inch, like 275, like 35 or 40 series sidewalls, maybe even, like a 40 series sidewall minimum. And it looks like that they're on like all-terrain vehicle tires, like the sidewall's so thick. But they say like it just really works for that car for whatever reason. And I think again, yeah, you're kind of going back to your point of with the Vitors, some of the guys on the C8 were trying the new Vitors and like just did not work. Like they just could not get the particular sizing to work with the sidewall, and like as well as like the electronics were just not having it. So again, as Bailey has said, you really kind of have to figure out what works for the chassis, what's going to work for your suspension, how you have your suspension set up, how you want the car to handle. And it's not just a matter of going on the forums and asking everybody, oh, like, what's the best tire? What do you guys like to run, etc. Like that, that'll at least get you a place to start, but that's all it is going to be.
Yeah, I would definitely agree with that. Like you said, when I ran, I mean, back in the day when I ran 200 treadwear with the Subaru, obviously we're talking about like a Hankook RS3 back in those days. And it kind of made it easy because they were just the best tire flat out, bar none. And especially for all wheel drive guys, that was the tire to run, da da da. Nowadays, I feel like there's such an opportunity. There's enormous amounts of options that you can try. So I don't know. It's pretty interesting in that sense of the different options, right? So pretty cool in that regard. So I'll be
sure.
interested to see your progression on the Time Attack Pros. If you stick with them, if you end up going a different direction, or whatever ends up happening, I'll be kind of interested to see if you stick with those or go a different direction. Because if you end up trying
Maybe
something else, I'll be interested.
maybe we should ask him, how did they work for you at your last event, the Ridge? Tell us a little bit about that. How did that go? What was the weather like? Uh, Obviously you did pretty well. If people don't know by now, but let's get that out. How did you finish?
I did okay. I
All
think
right,
for
come
my
on, you can say it. You can
event,
say it.
yeah, I took first and limited.
There we go.
I think the car, I got lucky. I was having a couple issues with the car beforehand. Last year when I was at Speed Summit and it was my first time up there, it rained pretty much the whole time and I was on a Hoosier and I didn't have any type of rain tire. So I only got in one session at the end of Saturday. And then, first thing Sunday morning, I had to put down my flyer, which, happened to work out for me at that event. But this year I got to get in some practice the weekend before. So I shipped my car up there and I just did an Audi Club of America, HPDE day and just got in some laps to feel the crowd because it's still a brand new setup for me. And I had to fly back to California and I had a wedding on Friday night in Temecula. So I flew out at 6 a.m. on Saturday morning, the morning of Global Time Attack. I landed, my sister picked me up. She made me drive from Seattle down to Shelton. And I got out of the car with 10 minutes until the first session. I threw on my suit as quickly as I can and I went out there and my second lap was the new class record. And so it was a great event. And then Sunday morning I backed it up and took I think a few more tenths off or a couple more tenths off and reset the record. And yeah, it was an amazing event. I absolutely love it. I've already kind of glowed about that track and the event is really cool. There's a really bunch of good people up there. People come from Canada and Oregon and Washington and everyone's super friendly and yeah, it's got to be one of my favorite events of the year. It's something I think that everyone should check out if they're in California or Arizona, wherever they are. I think it's worth the drive.
So what was your previous time and the V3
In
last
the
year?
V3, I did I believe it was a 140.7. And
Okay.
I think that the killer there is that front straightaway, and there's a couple other medium straightaways, but they're kind of all uphill. And that little S54 just is anemic at that track. And I think Jaeger made a couple comments about me not breaking into turn one last because I had courage, is because the car was maxed out, So this year
Nice.
I definitely had to break into turn one because the car's a bit faster. But I was dealing with splitter issues. Luckily, we got it sorted before the events is on a Global Time Attack. But the weekend before, on my very first test day, I'll take it back a little bit, at Button Willow, I clipped a cone with the front splitter and it literally exploded. It's like
Oh,
super poor quality splitter. The design is very poor as the shape of an airfoil. The profile is very poor. The tunnels are very poor. The quality and the durability is very poor. And when I clipped this cone at Button Willow, it literally just shattered. And so I had to get it repaired before I shipped it up to Washington. And we ended up using a styrofoam glider wing to make up the new front of the splitter, and then wet
Wow.
laid over that. And then when we went up the very first turn on the practice before Global Time Attack, the splitter ripped off on the front straightaway because you're going 150 plus, and it just ripped straight off the mounts, and then it chewed across all the work that we had just done. So we were there not practicing at all, but we ran down the street to the tractor store and got a fiberglass repair kit, and we're just wet laying fiberglass at the track. And yeah, so that splitter was giving us a headache. We ended up getting a few laps on Sunday afternoon, but it broke Sunday morning as well. So we got pretty lucky that the car made it to Global Time Attack and held there. But there's a bunch of giant metal plates underneath the splitter that are kind of holding it in place. So the bottom of my splitter isn't necessarily a high performing piece of equipment.
Nice. Did the car kind of live up to your expectations for what you had I know we all say, oh well, I don't really have any expectations, but like internally we all do. I mean, you at least wanted to go faster.
For sure.
But did it meet sort of what you were expecting?
Yeah, and I didn't quite know what to expect, but what I did expect was I was building a car to be at the top of the field in limited class and track mod class. So that's the standard. I'm not putting all this time and effort and thought into something that's going to take me a step backwards. I was really trying to take a leap forwards, and even though I was going, to a slower tire, I was kind of hell bent on getting a car that's going to perform and get some records. And so, I happened to get a record for this first event. I don't know if that's how every event's going to go, but yeah, I guess it did meet my expectations, but I still understand that the car has a lot of progress that needs to be made. There's a lot of work to do. And, some of that's suspension, some of that's the new aero package I'm waiting for. And I also have a lot of development to do. I need to understand how this thing wants to operate, and I need to, understand how to drive it and still be smooth with it. It's pretty rowdy. So, I'm used to an S54 where I can kind of be flat and put in really clean inputs and put together kind of these effortless laps. And now I really need to be on my toes because this car is dangerous now. It's a pretty fast vehicle. And so I think both me and the car have a lot of work to do. But once it gets there, it's going to be special.
450 horsepower, 315s. Come on, man. That ain't nothing.
It's rowdy, man. I'm telling you. It'll get away from you.
yeah.
Let me give you 625 with 295 305s.
Yeah, that sounds aggressive.
Oh man, Kilgore calling him out a little bit here.
Look, I got nothing on him. He's clearly doing something right.
Your trophies behind you. I don't want this humbleness from you. You need to be unhumble.
Listen. What do you got coming up next? Well, but before we move on too far from Speed Summit, what do you got coming up for the rest of the year? Where are you going next with the car? Where can we see you at?
Oh, I'd like to get in some tests. I still need to understand this thing, but the next big event for me is Grid Life at Laguna. I'll be going out there with all the SoCal Drivers Club guys, and that's going to be a great event. It was a great event last year, and I don't think Laguna is necessarily the best track on the planet, but I get excited, and I get that special feeling every time I show up there, and I know that it's going to be super competitive, and I'm sure there's some people there that are going to remind me that I need to show up at my best to end up at the top of the field, and that'll be great. Try and get in a few more test days after that, and then it's finals with Global Time Attack at Buttonwillow, and that'll
I
be
don't,
fun.
I don't know if Jackie Dean's going to be there, but like it would be awesome to see you and him battle it out in limited. That'll be super cool. And I know Jaeger and I have been talking about this. We know our USDC guys are going to be there. There's going to be some other guys. Jaeger and I are going to be there. We need to get together like a live, podcast kind of thing going. Get everybody kind of together, chatting up, seeing what's going on. We're gonna work on that. We're gonna figure that out for all you guys, for all of our
Let's do it.
listeners.
Yeah, it's definitely gonna happen. We just gotta, like you said, just gotta figure it out logistically. But 100% gonna find a way to do some live action from the track. I think that's just something we got to do, something we got to check out. So we'll get there. We'll figure it out. Don't you worry.
So like for Grid Life, for Global Time Attack, do you feel like that there's a little bit like of a, as you say, like you don't necessarily, Laguna's not your favorite, but going to that event, does it kind of like have a little more hype to it? Or do you get a little more hype kind of being there with the competition in those organizations versus, I'm not trying to talk down on like Bimmer Challenge, but it does, I've found that when I go, like it ratchets the tension up a little bit when you really get into these big competitions.
Absolutely. If I know that there's going to be people there that are going to perform really well, that are fast drivers and fast cars, I'm chances are I'm not sleeping the week prior to that event, and I'm thinking about every turn and every braking zone, and I'm concerned and I'm worried and I'm anxious, and I love that pressure. I kind of hate it in the moment, but one of the things I really enjoy about these events where I have to perform to win is all of that anxiety that builds up. It just weighs on you, but as soon as you're in the car, it kind of just disappears, and all of that pressure helps me kind of focus, and I love that pressure, and I love getting that one lap. And events like Grid Life Laguna, even though it's not my favorite track, I know I got to show up for that. And I can't wait. Just even if it wasn't a big event, Laguna has a special energy to it. Maybe the track's not my favorite, but when you pull up to the bottom of Laguna and you look up the hill and you see the giant car and the giant motorcycle, and you drive up, down, inside, and you look out and you see Laguna laid out in this little valley, that's something pretty special. And then you add Grid Life on top of it with a bunch of amazing drivers, a bunch of amazing cars. It's going to be a blast. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm very interested to see what happens at Laguna. Again, we haven't checked like the roster yet to see who's going to be there. One thing
we won't.
One thing, what's that, Kilgore?
I said we won't.
Because we can't,
they
right?
never they never release it. You just show up. You never know until you basically get out there after the first session.
Yeah, little bit of frustration, if you couldn't tell, Bailey, on that situation. But for me, it's one of those situations where I sit there and I look at all this stuff, and I'm like, I don't know, something about it where I want the capability to really just interact with you guys and just understand like the pressures and what's going on, so on and so forth. I think that's something that, to me, that's going to make a huge difference in, I don't know, I want to make it a cool experience, right? Laguna, like you said, is it like a bona fide like time attack track to me? But I still say it's like cool, right? It's history. Like there's history there, and you can compare your lap time to a cool car from back in the day. And I think that is something that I find extraordinarily awesome and cool. But again, I do kind of find myself in this weird situation of liking the podunk crappy towns and little small things, and it's like Gingerman to Grid Life and Buttonwillow to Global Time Attack. And it just, I find those I mean, even at World Time Attack, right? Even at World Time Attack, that's not the premium track, right? For Australia, like Sydney Motorsports Park obviously is a very, very good track, but I might be wrong because I'm not Australian, so Australian people don't kill me. But I do believe there's like better tracks in Australia that are more like high profile tracks. Let's just say the F1 track, right? So,
Or Mount
Sure.
Panorama.
Sure.
so there's stuff like that. So I don't know. I find those type of things kind of interesting. So I'll kind of go off on a little bit of fun thing. So what is, since we're talking about tracks and those type of things, what's the track that you think is the ultimate track for time attack?
The ultimate track for time attack. Oh, that's a tough one. Well, you said Laguna is not really a time attack style track, but the one thing Laguna does have going for it is that it's the benchmark for manufacturers and a lot of, IMSA races, and there's all those things that go there. So you do have a reference to understand where you're at with the fastest supercars in the world or the fastest race car drivers in the world. But I mean, as a SoCal guy, Buttonwillow is always going to seem like the time attack track, but I'd much rather have a time attack event at Sonoma. That would get me excited.
Well, let me tell you, you might have something to get excited about here in the near future.
I'm interested.
Yeah, I think what was that? What was the thing that we heard a little bit ago, Kilgore? What was that?
I don't know. There's been some talk about like something from overseas, kind of looking at a U.S. based world time attack event. We'll see what happens. But I if that's the case, man, I got to get out to Sonoma. I mean, I've been hearing recently, and maybe everybody's just jumping on the bandwagon. Although I don't think that's the case. But clearly, some of you guys out there on the West Coast who know what you're talking about, Sonoma is a high quality track. So that is one that is now on my list. I mean, for me, like Laguna was definitely the one, but that was also more of that comes from playing it so much, right, on like Gran Turismo, and it's always been in like the video games and things like that. So I felt like showing up, I already knew the track, right? Like I know all the turns, I know where it goes. So that is why it was such a bucket list track for me. But I don't know, everybody keeps talking about how good Sonoma is. So I think that's now going to be on my list. I got to get out there, see what's going on, especially not showing up for the first time at a big event like World Time Attack Challenge.
I would rate Sonoma as the premier #1 track on the West Coast.
Wow.
Which kind of
That's
makes me wonder why people aren't, or why organizations haven't run there in the past, or it hasn't been sort of a regular on the schedule.
It's a great question.
I'm going to say this. I think it has a little bit to do. I'm just throwing stones here, just guessing. I think it had a little bit to do with, in the time attack scene in general, when we were talking about essentially time attack, Southern California kind of held the bar. They're the ones who were kind of running the show. And because of that, they stuck to SoCal tracks. It was just a situation where it was easier for them because it was a Southern California based track. And I could be way off base on this, but it just makes sense to me that they were looking at it from hey, this is Southern California. I think we're going to stick to this, right? Just a stab in the dark. Just a stab in the dark. So you think Sonoma is the #1, like, and just to be clear, so not just track to drive at, we're talking time attack track.
I think that Sonoma requires a lot of driver effort and skill. I guess for me, what makes a good time attack track is something that is diverse in its requirements. Something that has slow turns and fast turns, something that has blind turns. I want a variety of different things. Like, if we go to Coda, if you have 1,000 horsepower but your car can't turn, you can still win. If I went to Coda with my car and it was the best handling car on the planet, but it only has 400 horsepower, I'm probably not going to get on podium. So I think going to a track that is tailored towards anyone's car and gives everyone a fighting opportunity. So you can pull the best merits out of each car at some point in the track. That's going to bring forth the best competition. And if the track requires skill, then it just takes it to the next level.
Fair enough.
I wholeheartedly agree. That's as much as it pains me to say this, because going to COTA and watching that event play out, it's so epic. And I say that because the track is epic and the driver experience is amazing. And to drive an F1 track is fantastic. But the negative is, like you said, if I have a lower horsepower car, it's just not
Good luck.
hitting the same.
Right.
That's fair.
So, yeah, I
Amazing
definitely.
track. I'd love to drive it, but I don't think that's. I think Sonoma compared to COTA is a completely different ballgame. I think Sonoma's the one. I'm sure once you show up to COTA, you get that same feeling you get when you show up to Laguna. There's something different about it. It's got an energy, I'm sure the facility is absolutely ridiculous and the track's a good track to drive, but I don't think it comes close
Yeah.
to.
I will say this though. I think if you were to take away the back straight, it becomes a pretty balanced track in
Yeah.
terms of you don't need a lot of power, right? Which it kind of going back to what Jaeger's saying there, which is it's kind of funny because I've heard people be like, "Oh, I don't really like COTA," or I've also heard people say the same thing about Road America, which was the first time I had gone there this year, and people say, "Oh, like it's just long straights, like it's super boring." And when I hear people kind of say that, now I'm like, you must have been in a slow car, right? Like you must have been in a low horsepower car, right? Where you're just kind of like, okay, maybe hitting like, and they're like, oh yeah, like my top speed was like 133 miles an hour. And I'm like, okay, yeah, I can see why that reflects on your opinion. But like, it's sort of interesting because Sonoma doesn't really have a long straightaway, and I don't know why, but I kind of, and I'm not saying like I'm more than welcome to be wrong, but like I kind of always associate at least one long-ish straight with a time attack track.
And maybe
And
that's
not
what
that,
things to say.
yeah, I mean, not that it necessarily has to be that way. It's just something I associate with it. Maybe I associate it with it wrongly, but I mean, you kind of have that at Sonoma turning out of like what the hairpin. I don't know if it's got that like a particular name. I think it's what turn 11 or something like that. But like that front straight could be flat out, with the little kink there at 12. So there are some areas where you do have some pretty good straightaways. It's just that they're like bending straightaways. They're not really just like a full straight.
I mean, coming out of the carousel, it's a pretty long straight and it's uphill. So if you got a powerful car, it's going to come out of that carousel and get into that braking zone at a pretty high rate.
Yeah. Looking forward to it. I hope it happens. Whatever it is that may or may not happen. I don't know.
Hopefully I'm there.
Oh, I think there'll be definitely a little invite for you there, bud. I definitely think there'll be a case.
I'll put you on the resume.
So we talked a little bit about this, and I just wanted to quickly touch on it just really quick again. So you said you did not build on unlimited. You didn't stay with unlimited, even though you were happier with those tires, because you didn't want to go the high horsepower route. So you went to the limited class, and obviously reading those rule books to make sure that you fell into that category. Is there anyone in particular that you looked at in the limited class for any like guide? Did you reach out to anybody for guidance, or was there any situation where you were looking at other people to try to understand, where you could fall or where you could be at in that limited category?
Not so much, being in an older platform, it's kind of a dying chassis, and everyone these days is in Supras and M2s and Corvettes, which is the new bread and butter. And
Yeah.
so the question, they wouldn't mean much to me because I don't think it's necessarily going to translate. So I think for me though, I saw how competitive these classes are with these new cars, and I thought it'd be fun to go up against them in something that's old and light and goes about the approach is just totally different. I'm about weight and chassis, and these guys are about modern cars with multi-link rear suspension and tons of power and tech into turbos. And yeah, I thought it'd be super fun to see if I could manage to be with a pack of guys in cars that were designed 30 35 years later.
Heck yeah. Which I appreciate. We know that you listen to other episodes on this podcast. We had Cal Fortner on our last episode, and we were talking about cool builds, and we think that it's like really important that the community continues to do cool builds. When you go to Time Attack events, what cars do you see that gets you excited? Like your E36, that's one that gets me excited. I'm like, all right, that's a cool build, lightweight, it's different, but yet still very effective. What are cool builds that you see and get you excited?
I think anything that's a little bit different gets me excited. For example, Kevin with the S10, he showed up to Speed Summit, and that is a man's car. No ABS, no traction control, in this tiny little 2-door Chevy with monster power. That's a cool build, and that's another.
That thing was fast.
It
was fast.
And he's been chipping away at it. He keeps getting faster every year, and I think next year he's going to be sub 40. And I think that once he just kind of keeps putting a little bit more time, that car is going to be really potent. Yeah, anything that's different that steps out of the norms, and I think Supras are cool, but a Supra with a turbo and big aero on it is just kind of another Saturday at the racetrack. And I think. I was really into Corvettes, and now that everyone's getting into them, maybe I'm losing a little bit of excitement over them just because it's become a little bit more common. But the fastest car in my class right now is Alan with the Corvette, and that's a super cool build. And he's got the best components on it. He's got the Penske's and the APs, and he's got side pipes on the thing with the Zebulon Aero. That's a cool build to me. And even though the Corvettes are becoming abundant, I look at that and I'm like, that's a serious build. There's a lot of time and effort and resources put into that. That's exciting, and it's insanely.
I can at least appreciate that he went to the C7, which is not the chassis that you normally kind of see people doing. So
he took a risk. He thought, no one's really developed this chassis to that extent, and let's see what we can do with it. And he's been super successful with it. So anyone that kind of steps outside of the bubble and puts effort into something that no one else has done, and they're successful with it, that's cool.
I mean, honestly, and this is going to sound kind of strange. I know this is going to sound strange. Even if you're not overly successful, I think taking a car that is not in a situation that isn't uber popular, that's not the Corvette, the Supra, those type of things, right? If you're not utilizing those, and yet you're going after something and being different, I think in that own right, in Time Attack, you can be extremely successful. And that, to me, like you guys have been saying over and over and over again, I'm just going to reiterate it like hell, is it's awesome to be different. That's one thing about Time Attack that is just completely different than a lot of other sports, motorsports in general, is that just showing up and having a different car can instantly net you affection and affinity from the viewers, from the fans, right? And that's something that, for me, when I look over and I go, oh man, that car is just different, I'm going to go check that car out because, and again, like you said, like, don't get me wrong, Supras are awesome and they have their place. They're super cool and damn, are they fast. But there is something that it's just one of those situations where you're like, man, I've seen 7 of them on track already, and they all look exactly the same. And so, we kind of give a lot of guff to people who don't have liveries. So, if you're at least going to do that, you at least got to do like the craziest livery possible or something of that nature.
Of course.
But yeah, kind of went off on tangent there. Sorry about that, guys. I tangent a lot. That's kind of the things I do. So the question then goes to, so you were going to start today, and I'm going to say this right now. We're going to start today. And I said, okay, Bailey, we're going to go build a car together. I got $100,000. I got $100,000. What are we doing? What car are you choosing to start with?
I think I need to ask more questions. I think I would, I think I would need to know, what class are you trying to compete in? That's a pretty important one.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Um, in this moment, you're a limited class, limited.
I mean, if I had 100 grand and I wanted to be competitive and limited, I'd probably go buy a used Supra and put, you know, brakes and tires and tune it and put it on, corn fuel and go get on the podium. Uh, or, if I was me, I'd probably buy another E36 and see what I can do.
Okay. Yeah, just curious from a complete start over standpoint, like where do you start at? Like what's the car that you kind of look at and go, "Man, I think it'd be," cuz like when we had Cal and those guys on, one of those situations, that got brought, like, well, we had Cal and yeah. But it's one of those things, like, what are you going to start with? And like Cal Fortner and he started off with Audis and then he went to the Mercs. And one of his things was like, yeah, it's just different. And that's the car that he talked to Dewey and it got inspiration and boom. Right. And I found it interesting just to see like because I'm not going to lie. Like if I said, I want a podium, like you said, right. If I want a podium, if I want to win, I'm probably picking a Toyota Supra or I'm picking a Corvette. And those are the two things that I'm immediately going to go win. If I said I want to go have the most fun and be as unique as possible, now the door opens. Like I'm weird and I'm like, I want to pick like a 1972 Datsun Z. Like
Yeah,
I want
cool.
that car.
Well,
But
yeah, I mean, if you don't want to, be competitive, then that's the car to get,
yeah.
So, but someone could get it and they could figure it out. I think it just takes commitment and patience and a little tenacity. And I think you can probably make any chassis do what it needs to do with the right, thoughts and the right amount of funds,
But that's also like okay, you do go buy the Supra. I know we're crapping on Supras, but you go buy car, whatever OP car that's hot right now. And it's like, okay, you go get on the podium. But I feel like that ultimately, uh, ultimately, like nobody, not that we're all like trying to be legends or people remember our names, but like nobody really remembers that car, or it was right. Like it was just another car. But if you build something that is out of the ordinary, if you're stubborn like Bailey, he said he was going to stick with the E36. If you build an E36 and you make it fast and you get on the podium, that's like, to me, that's when people start to like remember and know, like they look up to that builder, that car, that driver, and be like, man, like that's cool. That's not just another car that's on the podium. Like, okay, here's another trophy for a Corvette. Here's another trophy for a Supra, but like, here's a guy who bucked the trend, and let's give some respect to him or her. So that's where I think like that's where it takes it to another level, which is you can have a car, it can be different, and you may or may not necessarily be competitive. Eventually, you may spend enough time and money and commitment to make it competitive, and then that's when it like supersedes other normal kind of pedestrian builds, and that's what I love. That's that's Time Attack to me. That's what I love about
it
it.
is Time Attack. That's what makes it so cool is that I think that these cars are kind of an extension of ourselves, and the fact that we get to pick every single nut and bolt and part that goes into it. It's it's your own personalization of who you are and how you want to present yourself to the world and how you want to be competitive.
So
Yep.
I just want to lean in a little bit, and we're going to talk a little bit more about Global Time Attack and the Ridge at this juncture. So, Bailey Woods, you were there, my man. Tell us, I just want to pick your brain a little bit. You were there, obviously competing, so I do understand when you're competing, the blinders kind of get put on and you're very focused. But what are some of the people and the things that really stuck out to you and really the things that, pop out in your brain that you were like, man, these guys are really awesome, or this car was really cool. Obviously, we already mentioned Kevin and his truck. But what were some of the other guys that were out there?
Man, everyone out there is just extremely nice. Not that people in California aren't nice, but it's a
Yeah,
different vibe.
okay.
It's it's a different vibe when you get up there, and maybe it's all the friendly Canadians that come down and are just extra polite and tell you how wonderful you are. And um, Ryan was out there in his Supra, and I was cheering him on. I met him last year, and we shared a garage together, and he was an extremely nice guy, and he's a competitive guy, and he's in a silver Supra. So even though maybe that car doesn't stand out, it's awesome to see him go and, push it just like all of us are pushing it. And, everyone there is great. George Zhao and his R8, I've known him for a while because he's done Bimmer Challenge, but this was the first time I've got to directly compete against him, which is, super exciting because last year he got the class record, and there's that video of him coming up over the hill and the back of his car's on fire and it's his record lap. And I'm just like, man, that's pretty cool. I'm excited to go and compete against that guy and then see how I can stack up. And Lawrence is another guy that I see out there, and I know him I think I met him through Bimmer Challenge as well. And he lives up there in Washington, but he was out there in his cup car. And everyone out there is amazing. Everyone is super friendly and helpful, and I think everyone else's biggest fan and cheerleader. And I just can't speak highly enough about the group of people that come out for that event, and I look forward to it every year. I hope it keeps going, and I can't wait for next year. I'm counting down the days already.
Yeah, it was a pretty successful event as a whole. Like, there was quite a few people that showed up, which I'm glad. I'm glad to see that it is continuing to grow. Definitely one of those things where the growth of that is huge. It needs to continue, obviously, as we well know.
I know we weren't necessarily going to talk about results, but maybe we should. As I kind of pulled them up, I was kind of running through 43 total entrants, but maybe we can run through some of the classes, and then Bailey, if you can maybe give us kind of some things that you saw or that you knew of that were going on. I hate that Global wasn't able to stream it, because I do like being able to watch this one. I think it's really cool. The track's really cool. Not to say it photographs really well, but like it just looks really good, and it's easy to follow the cars throughout their entire lap. So
yeah, I mean, like I said, I spent the weekend with Kevin. We shared garages this time, and I think last year he did like a 42 or something like that, and this year he came out and literally every session kept clicking off. I think averaging like half a second. So getting to watch him go out every single session and just get a little quicker and a little quicker, and basically PRing every single session, that was super awesome to watch. And seeing his energy every time he hopped out of the car, that's I don't know if it's intoxicating or what, but that kind of kept me boosted for the week. And because of social media, I got to speak to a bunch of people that I've spoken to on Instagram, but never got to meet in person. So like James Taylor, I got to meet him for the first time, and we had spoken a little bit before the event. And super cool build. We were just talking about building a 70s Datsun, and maybe we didn't speak that highly of it, but his car is beautiful, and it's really cool to see him doing something different. Like we said, having a unique car in Time Attack, it's what makes Time Attack so cool. I didn't keep up too much with the unlimited class. I was concerned about the 4 GT3 RSs and all the other cup cars that were out on track with me, trying to keep them behind me. Yeah,
I mean, I do like, for the unlimited class, we had Kevin Phillips, which again, a Chevrolet S10 pickup truck winning unlimited class, doing a freaking 140.7. Like, dude, that is just insane. That's awesome.
Yeah,
but I also like
no
to see
no traction control. That's a man's truck. That's
absolutely
win. That's awesome.
Yeah. A Toyota MR2 in second place, so that's super cool at a 143.8. And then we got a Subaru WRX STI. We got a Nissan 350Z. And then, like you said, James Taylor's Datsun. So a good mix of cars. I mean, that's a solid seven entrants. All in unlimited class. Definitely solid.
Yeah, I think both this year and last year, limited class was the big class. And I think that's just another thing, is I know limited class pretty much at all Global Time Attack events seems to be where everyone shows up. And I thought that was, kind of exciting. But, George Zhao is right behind me. He was only off by half a second. So, and then, behind him, 0.2 of a second. So the podium was relatively tight. And, like I said, there's I think four GT3 RSs in there somewhere. So
They
yeah,
always seem to show up there at the Ridge, man. That
I
is,
don't know what it
They
is.
do.
It's Porsche City, I don't know why they're out there, but it's cool. That's another thing that, it's not necessarily, I don't think of Porsche and Time Attack as, the norm, but to see so many of them show up, that's cool. That's something specific to the Pacific Northwest that I guess only Speed Summit really offers, because you don't really see it at the other events.
Yeah. So you've got here next to your BMW M3 as the as a sponsor, Velvet Thunder. Give us a little bit of rundown what that's about.
Yeah, I think for my first global time attack back in 2023, I didn't quite know what to put, so I just put something ridiculous. And guess it hasn't changed. It probably should say JMP AutoWorks instead of Velvet Thunder, but maybe they'll forgive me. I'm not sure.
Nice. Yeah, let's see how many we have. What, gosh, 17 entrants there. Yeah, that's massive.
I mean, that is a solid group of cars. And I'm going to say this, right? So from your 138.8 to, I'm going to say, man, even 10th place was a 144. So, I mean, from 138, you're talking to 5th place was a 148, 141.0. I mean, that's a pretty tight grouping. You were definitely having to be on it the entire weekend, because any of those guys could have snuck a lap in at any given point. So, man, that made it really tough for you to be able to sleep nice in your bed on Saturday night. That's for sure.
Yeah, I thought for sure George was going to get me. I know he's kind of a native up there, and I know that he's ran 38s in the past. I talked to him a little bit about that, and he said usually the conditions are pretty good when that happens. But, it's always a dynamic environment when there's drifters on track, and, whether you hate it or love it, I'll be reserved on my opinion about it, but I know it's for the fans. And every session you go out, you're not quite sure what the conditions are going to be. And we also had some pretty light rain showers throughout the week. So you could be on track and you're about to put down a flyer, and then out of nowhere it's sprinkling. So, like my fastest lap of the weekend, I threw away because it started raining at the end of the lap, and I hit the braking zone and the car got all out of whack, So,
That's wild.
yeah, I thought for sure he was going to click him off. And then the 4th session on Sunday, George went out on a new set of tires, and I think he did like 11 laps, and I was just staring at the and I was looking at the timer, and he was clicking off lines, low 39, low 39. I was just thinking, he might have it in him, but luck. I guess I got lucky. I thought he was going to get it.
Man.
So jump into that. Sorry about that. But jump into that a little bit more, man. So what was the weather condition throughout the entire weekend? What was that like?
Well, Friday it was pouring, but I wasn't there. I didn't show up till Saturday morning, like I said. And then Saturday and Sunday, for the most part, it was, partly cloudy and I think in the 70s. So it was pretty nice weather compared to last year. And then just every once in a while, the rain cloud would sneak by and sprinkle the track just to keep us all on our toes. But outside of that, it was a good weather week.
Now you can appreciate that turbo weather.
Yeah, well, the S54, it's funny because people always say turbo weather, but I know firsthand experience how much that crisp, cold December, November button willow air will do for an S54. That's worth a second for sure. But yeah, I could definitely understand that the straightaway you get definitely a few more miles per hour when that weather's down in the 60s.
It is pretty cool, though. I do like seeing that as I go through these names. I'm recognizing quite a few from last year, so that's always great when we see people return. I will say, so moving into I'm gonna slide us along into street class. I'm actually super impressed by Jared Floyd's time of 141.
Yeah,
in street class.
That's insane.
God,
Wow,
that is fast.
Another Supra.
Yeah, I mean that's
first, second, and third.
Yeah, and there's, Ryan did really good. I think he was having some car issues, so I don't know if he got to, perform to the best of his ability like he did last year. I know he did really well, and it was cool to see him make it out, I think, for the last two sessions on Sunday, but I know he was struggling a little bit out there.
It is nice to see too some Subaru action there. So Mitchell Huey, I actually got to meet him last year out at the track. That car is actually super beautiful. I think they ended up losing something on the car last year. So it ended up not continuing forward. But it's kind of cool to see that he ended up in a situation where he was able to get the car back up, running, and then having fun at this event and doing pretty good. I mean, 5th place in a Subaru. Technically speaking, if you exit all the Supras, you'd end up in 2nd. So
That's a solid result.
again,
I mean, it is pretty tight from 2nd through 7th.
Oh,
I mean,
incredibly. I mean, it's 146. I mean, realistically, 146 to 7th place. So from 2nd to 7th, you're talking about a 3-second delta. So those cars alone are super tight in that. Corey Kreider, he has gone through a struggle bus full of fun the last few years, building that Subaru of his. He did a lot of wiring in this last year. He even had a struggle where I think he went out to Coda to test this thing, and then someone broke into his truck and stole all of his stuff, like all his helmet and everything. So glad to see he was able to make it back out there and have some fun at the track. And Charles Lincoln, his car is pretty, I don't want to say stock, but pretty street car for street class, which is kind of funny to say. And he actually pulled out a pretty good time of 152.77. So that's really awesome to see. Got the BMWs having a good time there at the bottom. Man. And then, okay, let's jump into enthusiast class real quick. So enthusiast class, a 149.177 with an all-wheel drive record, Bradley Copus in his Mitsubishi Evo. So, I know this guy. Wait a second. So this is the problem with no pictures or videos. So if it's the guy I think it's the guy who was at Super Lap in Texas. And this Evo is awesome, and he's preparing to build it up, and I could be way wrong, so apologize if I am, but if not, he had a Mitsubishi Evo, he was building it, and he had oxygen something or something of that nature on the side of the car last time I saw it. So glad to see that he was able to get that car back running. It had an issue at Coda, ended up hitting something, broke loose, and then it was his wastegate dump tube broke and then took out his radiator and all the sorts of other stuff. So but I mean, it was all easy fixes, just something he didn't want to fix on the last day at Coda and try to scramble to get it one more lap when he was already winning pretty heavily. And then we have Teddy. Oh, Teddy, you're killing me with your last name.
That's all you, Jager.
Sioka. We're going with Sioka on that one. It's Teddy Sioka and his Honda Civic Type R with a 149.272 with a front-wheel drive record. We love records. We love announcing records at any given time. And I must go back to Jared Floyd in his Toyota Supra in street class because he also had a rear-wheel drive record as well. And George Zhao technically still set a record in limited class with an all-wheel drive record. And then, obviously, Bailey Woods here that we are talking to now set the overall fastest record as well as the rear-wheel drive record. So, pretty stout with 1, 2, what is that? Technically speaking, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 records slain at this event.
That's a good weekend.
That's pretty stout. Because I will say this, obviously, Bailey, you know this as well, too. Going to Buttonwillow, records are very, very hard to break. They happen all the time. They do, but they are very, very hard to break at Buttonwillow because of the heritage of the track and all the time that people have spent there versus I will say this track, we're in the third year, one of the two. So we're talking about it is, I don't want to say easier, but obviously there's less heritage there, so there's less time spent there. But the records are very stout still. So to even see people break those records, it is still very astounding. So big thanks for all the people who went out there and had a good time, did the Ridge, broke records, did the time attack thing. I am sad again. I will say this. I'm sad that there was no live stream. I think that really helps us as just fans of time attack really be able to enjoy it to the level that we really need to enjoy it. But I understand it is one of those situations as it grows. And this is where I'm going to say this to everybody in the fan base here. As it grows, aka the more of you that show up, the more of you that take part, the more coverage the event will get. Just saying, we have to put in the time and effort to cultivate that event to really build it appropriately. Look at Kilgore. He's looking over at the Buttonwillow records. He's getting ready. He's trying to get himself prepped and ready to.
That's the background on my computer right there.
I was gonna try and lead us into well, what's Bailey thinking in terms of his chances at the records at Buttonwillow GTA Finals.
I'm thinking.
All right. Scheming, planning. Love to see it.
I'm feeling that 142 by Professional Awesome for the limited outright. That's I think that falls under the blistering category. But
yeah.
The limited rear wheel drive is definitely there. That outright limited record that's going to take some work. But anything's possible. Maybe not this year, but I don't think Buttonwillow's going anywhere. Maybe next year we can get somewhere close to there.
Anytime you're taking a record from Ferris Khartoumi, you know that is serious business.
That being said, I feel like if you're not from California, you just don't perform at Buttonwillow the way the locals do. I think it's one of those tracks where I don't know if it's the local knowledge or just the fact that all the tracks in SoCal have the worst asphalt and tarmac out of any of the tracks in the country. But when anyone comes from the East Coast or from out of state and they come to Buttonwillow, I feel like they just don't put it together the way that we can because they're just not used to that high caliber, surface.
You're saying Willow Springs doesn't have the best cement you've ever touched in your life?
Well, the best thing about Willow Springs is when you're going around turn 8 fast enough, you'll be on the inside of the turn and then you blink and for some reason now you're on the outside of the turn and you don't really know how you got there,
So let's look back. What did you run last year? You did not run.
No, I ran 2023 was the last time I did finals, or the first and last time I did finals. So that's when,
I remember the first time I met you was at finals, and I pulled up to you. You were fresh, like unloading your trailer or something like that. And obviously, I saw the BMW, and as I rode by, I was looking at it, and I'm like, man, this thing is clean. And I'm like, and then I get a little bit closer, and then the details start popping out, and the things start happening. And I just had to, it's one of those cars you had to walk up on. You had to ask, like, what's going on with it? What kind of power? And then you told the power. Then you were talking about, the lightness and the balance and the preparation. And so obviously I think at that time, me and you talked for probably like 20, 30 minutes and you gave some insights into what you expected to run. And obviously I kind of walked away with that going, okay, high hopes that he's going to do something good, but man, time attack cars, they're brutal. These guys have a lot of horsepower. And man, you did not disappoint. I will say we ended up saying your name quite a bit and so it's just one of those situations where I immediately looked at your car. I thought it was super cool. And then like we talked about it, this, that, and the other. Man, it was just awesome to see that you were able to perform and get to all those things that you needed to do. And you were able to end up pulling out a second place to Craig Coker, which is very, very impressive for that was your debut in time attack per se, which again, was just absolutely astounding. Did you think that you were going to kind of be at that point when you showed up?
Well, I'm pretty good with my goals. So when I told you I was going to run a 145, I kind of knew that it was gonna happen, but as far as getting on the podium, I didn't think so. And I think I may have gotten a little lucky that weekend because I believe the two big boys at that event had some mechanical issues. There was the GTR that wasn't running, and I think there may have been one more that wasn't running, maybe the S2000 or something. I don't recall.
Oh,
But
yeah. Yeah.
either the two top dogs were out, and that opened the door for me. And I put together, a pretty clean lap Saturday morning and another clean lap Sunday morning, and it happened to be good enough. But I think for me, the podium was one thing. It was cool to show up for my first global time attack and be competitive in a non-time attack car. But I think for me, hitting my target goal that I set and I thought was a really lofty goal, and to be able to achieve that, that's kind of what made that weekend out of anything,
Yeah. I mean, again, it was stellar. And obviously we talked about you a lot during that live stream and just talking about like what the car was about. And I think it kind of invigorated, my opinion is probably invigorated a lot of people to reconsider. And when I say reconsider, I'm talking about reconsider the concept of how they approach the build of their car. And that's kind of what I'm really hoping our talk here today really gets people to start thinking about, because I think most people with this immediate concept of time attack would go, oh, if I'm building a limited class car, this car needs to make 850 horsepower minimum. And that's where some people might need to retune a little bit and understand that with time, experience, and driver mod, building a well-balanced and well-curated car can make that delta from high horsepower down to a lower horsepower and make the car more reliable, make it more consistent, and be able to get to that level. And then if you need to, I'm pushing you forward, Bailey. I'm hoping and dreaming that everything's going to go great. But at the same token, I go down this path and I say, I love the construct that you are looking at those records and going, can I break those? And can I break those this year? I am super curious, like if you can break those records with sub 500 horsepower, that will be so incredible. It will be so incredible. I can't stress that enough. It will be astonishing and incredible, and I will be the first one to give you the biggest high five and say congratulations, because that will be ridiculously hard, because people generally have relied on horsepower. They've said, it's easy. I can just turn up the boost, and then we can blast on that straightaway, and then we can figure the corner out when we get there. So
you are getting me pretty hyped up right now. Yeah, I mean, that's it. That's exciting. I want to do what I think are incredible things with a car that's, unassuming or unexpected. And, I think once you get the record, people are like, oh yeah, that car weighs that much. That makes sense. Or, oh, he's on a 315. Yeah, that tracks, which is fine. But yeah, I want to get those records. That's the whole intention of my build. And I would love to do it in a package that's a little bit different and stand out from everybody else. And even though I can't quite preach simplicity the way I used to, I think seat time and chassis development and weight, it's gonna go pretty far, and I hope I don't disappoint you.
Oh, I don't think you will. Not in the slightest. Not in the slightest. Well, Kilgore, what else you got?
Let me. Oh, well, hold on. Give me
2 seconds. 2 seconds. Wait. Hold on. He's got to go through his curated BMW questions.
No.
What?
But no, I mean, if we're talking about records, you got Buttonwillow coming up at the end of the year, November, Global Time Attack Finals. We've already talked about obviously you're going to go to Laguna, but let's talk about what your goals there at Laguna are. We're talking about setting records. A 129.28 held by Brad Perkins in the he's in an E36 M3, highly modified E46 M3, which I will also say very much appreciate. He has a unusual engine in that car, still a BMW. I couldn't tell you what it is.
I believe it's an S62. The
Okay.
V out of the E39 M5, and I believe
I
it's
think you're right. Yeah. 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 I think you're right. Yeah. I was going to say it was a 60 something. I was going to say a 68, but yeah, I think you're right. 62. So again, super cool to see that, but 29.2, I think it's pretty reasonable. What you think? You feeling confident? If
I,
everything goes well, I mean, in terms of your expectations?
I'd feel a lot more confident if my real splitter was going to arrive in time. I don't know if it's going to or not. I think with my current setup, it's plausible. I think I definitely have to show up and put together something pretty spicy and keep it real clean. But I think that record might change this year, whether it's me or it's someone else. I think that record's going to get beaten.
Sure. So, in terms of your kind of going back to what you've built is very much again, it's not like a super high strung car.
No.
Even your previous car, right? Like a fairly basic S54, which, okay, you blew up your first one, but that, it's not like you were doing any sort of crazy build. So when you go out, especially considering you're on the Hoosier Track Attack Pros, what's your usual strategy for a time attack session? Are you a person who sets your fastest laps in the first couple, or can you stay out there for a little while and kind of keep trying to click those tenths off, and so your third, fourth, fifth lap may be fastest?
Historically, I'm a first or second lap of the day competition kind of guy. I think that, if you get practice the day before, I usually like to show up on a set of, older tires that don't have that same level of peak performance. And I'll spend the day practicing, basically developing what I believe is, the perfect lap in regards to a nice clean lap on where all the braking points are and, where my turn-in points, and trying to understand basically the roadmap to this perfect lap, and then showing up that Saturday morning or that Sunday morning with a brand new set of tires and doing exactly what I know I need to do, and not trying to push it, just put together a super clean lap using my key points and details that I outlined the day before. And I usually get put together on the first or second lap, my fastest lap of the weekend. Everything after that, you're pushing braking zones, you're trying to give it a little more power through here, and usually I find myself just pushing too hard the rest of the day and overheating tires and not driving clean anymore. And so usually that first lap or that second lap is the one for me.
Nice. I will say
I
this. I
think
remember I was watching. This was probably one of the first times that I was like introduced to Bailey Woods was through your YouTube channel, and you were out at Button Willow, and I think it was just a video on you doing like a track day. But I remember you talked about how you actually, like, part of your routine, and you went through it, was literally visualizing and talking through the lap. And I was like so unbelievably impressed with your like specificity in terms of brake marker, pedal pressure, downshift, fourth, third, turn in at this point, looking for this, car's going to do this, react, ease on the gas, right? Like it was super impressive. And that was like one thing I took away. Is like, that is what people talk about when they talk about like visualize your lap before you go out. I was like, that is like the most clean, well put together execution of that I've seen. So, I've tried to implement some of that as well. So uh, thanks for kind of providing that on your YouTube channel. I mean, I think if anybody goes and finds that, like, we should all try to do that, which I think goes to your point of that's how you're able to go out, do exactly that clean lap on that first or second first or second session, and you're able to hit your marks. You know exactly what you're looking for. You've got that little bit of extra grip from the tires, and now you've set, a record lap. So,
Well, I'm glad you appreciated that. I think that's a super fun drill, and I think if you go out there with that game plan, it just opens up your bandwidth a little bit more. You're not thinking about so much about what to be doing because you've already rehearsed it. You know exactly what to do, and now you can utilize that extra capacity, that thinking power, to understand How do my tires feel? Like, can instead of braking later, like, can I come off the brakes a little sooner and smoothly roll and scrub into this turn? And just feeling the track and the conditions and what your car is doing. And you can focus on that and how to make those micro adjustments as opposed to, oh, I got to brake at 295 or whatever it's going to be. So I like that drill. And I'm glad that, you appreciated it. And I've had a few people tell me that they like that drill as well. So I'm a big fan of that.
Nice. Where can people find your YouTube at and social media generally? And let's also talk about your Instagram handle. What the heck is that, man?
So I believe I haven't done any YouTube videos in quite a while, but I believe my YouTube is Bucci Bird, just like my Instagram. I think that was a nickname given to me in high school back in my wannabe gangster days, and it stuck. And everyone always asks what it is, and I just kept it. That's my alias.
All right. You spell that Buccibur. So look up that, or you can
That's
look
the
up
one,
Baby
Bucci
Woods.
Bird.
Bucci Bird. All right. Cool. Jaeger, you got anything else? Man, I'm excited that we're all going to be at Laguna. I'm really looking for this. We got 4 weeks. We got a month.
Coming up.
It's going to be awesome.
Is
Got
there
some work.
anything, any other big changes, any other big things that you're going to be doing to the car prior to Laguna? Not
There's a
trying to,
few-
give away too much, but
Oh, it's okay. I'm an open book. I think it's funny when people are super secretive. It's that's cool if you want to be that way. I'm happy to share whatever information I can. We originally talked about the community at first, and I learned so much from so many people, especially in Bimmer Challenge, just understanding car setup and what parts to go with and what parts not to go with. So I think it's my responsibility to provide information to other people the same way people provided it to me. But for the car, nothing too crazy. The biggest thing would be if my new splitter and wing come in, those will go on the car. And I probably won't have time to test and change spring rates. And I'd like to revalve the dampers when that time comes. But I think for Laguna, I'm mostly likely going to be stuck with my my A+ splitter, and I may switch. I'm currently divorced when it comes to the rear dampers. I don't have true coilovers in the rear. I'd like to get those sent off to MCS, which they said they would address. And you do an inverted true coilover in the rear so you can get the car a little bit lower. It provides a little bit more clearance. That's the big issue right now, is the car can't get low enough with the huge tires. Outside of that, I think we may make a master cylinder adjustment for the rear brakes. I can't quite get the bias to where I want it to be, and I'd like it to be a little bit more rear aggressive so I can kind of step into turns. And that may just be because I'm dealing with the understeer from the underperforming splitter. But I think getting the car a little bit more neutral on turn entry is going to be my biggest focus before the car gets to Laguna, and just a couple small things outside of that.
that's pretty awesome.
Nice.
One thing, again, I'm just going to stress this kind of keys on what Kilgore talked about earlier. The way that you talk about balancing the car and about the specific things that you need to make the car perfect. I'm going to say this right now. This is probably like every engineer's wet little dream, to be like, give me a driver that can tell me every little thing that it's something that you learn over time and you have to work at, and you can't, like, I'm assuming, out of curiosity, again, and I'm stretching this even longer, but it's one of those things. What were some of the stepping stones that you kind of went through to get to be able to give this kind of information to the team or to yourself so you know what to change?
I think, well, I was a commercial flight instructor for a long time, teaching people how to get their commercial ratings in airplanes, and everything is so detail oriented when you're training people to fly aircrafts, and understanding all the technical aspects of the airplane and what they do, and what that causes, and things like that. So when I was driving my car, I think just going out there and trying to understand what you're feeling and what does that mean? What does the car do when you hit the brakes? How much does it dive? How does that affect your turn entry? What's the car do as it rolls side to side when you're going through the S's? How much does it squat when you're on throttle? And how's it hooking up? And what does it do? How does it react to bumps in the track? And just asking yourself as many questions as possible and trying to identify as many things as possible helps you build a bigger picture of what's actually happening. And once you kind of outline that and you see everything the car is doing, you can say, oh, well, the car does this, so why is that happening? And then, if you do enough research, you can say, oh, okay, well, it's doing this because the high speed compression is too stiff, and that's why I can't handle these bumps right now. So maybe I need to bring that back a few clicks. And then you actually go do that adjustment. I think a lot of people buy fancy suspension and don't twist the knobs on them. And you make some adjustments, then take some notes and try and identify, okay, well, what did it do differently this time? Was it better? Was it worse? Was it just different? And so that's the thing, is just identify what the car is doing, and most importantly, identify what are the inputs that you're putting into the car that's causing that situation. So just be methodical and take notes.
That I love that, right? Like that is one of those things where people need to take notice. Being able to decisively talk about those attributes, immensely helpful, and try to learn those skills. Like I'm not saying everybody needs to go out and become a commercial pilot trainer, but definitely one of those things where maybe take a couple notes along the way.
Notes are good. My boss tells me to take notes all the time. He's a smart guy, so I'll take notes on the racetrack, take notes at work, just take notes.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Well,
all right, well, guys, we need to wrap this one up. This has been fun. Bailey, thank you so much for coming on. Can't wait to get out there with you at Laguna. That's going to be a great time. Jaeger's going to be out there, obviously, as we said. I'll be out there. Come by, say hello to us. All the SDC guys are going to be out there. It's going to be an awesome event. If you're in the California area or the surrounding area, come check it out. It's a great event. Buttonwillow Finals. I know they're not quite the spectator event that Laguna is, but that's another event that I'm hoping to be out there. Things are still looking, maybe possibility. So we'll see what happens. But make sure you follow us on Instagram, Perfect Lap Podcast. We're gonna keep you guys updated with what's going on in the time attack world. You can check out our website at perfectlappodcast.com. If you want to email the show, you can do that at maximumattack@perfectlappodcast.com. Again, we release episodes every other Thursday, so we're continuing to do that. If you're wondering kind of what our schedule is, you can find us on you can find our episodes on YouTube as well as Apple Podcasts and Spotify. As always, thanks for listening. We hope you enjoyed this episode with Bailey Woods. For all you time attackers out there, keep pushing, go fast, take chances. We'll catch you in the next one.